page. Here we will provide you with the sports betting tips, picks, and information in order for you to become a successful gambler. We have 5 packages that I think really do an incredible job of providing the information tailored to you, what you want, and what your sports betting needs are. For more information, reach out to the TWSN team, but we have a ton of stuff coming your way. Content from fantasy football, sports betting for UFC, NBA, NHL, and of course, the NFL. We are so excited to be able to bring this service to you, and let us know if there's any more information you need.
Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now because it's the place that it all goes down on.
Welcome back to the TWSN Off the Top Rope Show, live here on the TWSN YouTube channel. I'm your host, Justin Lacertosa. As always, joined by my co-host, Matt Blaustein. Matt, this past week in wrestling, we've seen a lot of unexpected things. We're getting Brock versus Lashley finally, Seth Rollins versus Reigns, and even the Forbidden Door is starting to crack slightly open. We'll get into that all later, but how have you been doing?
Doing well, doing really well. I'm really excited to see what the Royal Rumble has in store for us, honestly. I haven't been this excited about a Rumble since, I think I want to say 2020. So haven't been excited in like a year or 2 years. I'm really excited for this Rumble, though.
Yeah, so am I. I think they're building this card as to being one of the bigger cards of the entire year, and it's clear that they're going in that direction. It's going to be a big pay-per-view. But before we get into our full review and preview, go subscribe to the TWSN Betting Patreon, 50% off of all of January. The team has been killing it ever since they launched the Patreon. They've been killing it week in and week out. You give some money, you gain some more money. So go subscribe, 50% off. It's a great deal. Go follow the Instagram and Twitter at TWSN for all your daily sports updates. Download the mobile app at TWSN to access all of the content from our team of 60-plus writers here. And subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you like daily shows like this for every single sport, we have it here. And we also have daily video breakdowns. So go subscribe and leave us a like. And let's just get right into it. So I want to start off with the Universal Championship match, Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins, because this is something when Rollins was on SmackDown, they teased at it a lot. It never happened. They moved him over to Raw. And now we're getting it. And if we were going to get this match sometime this year, I would have assumed it would be after the draft or at WrestleMania. But we're getting it at the Rumble. And there's even some rumors going around that Reigns might drop the title to Rollins in this match. So, Matt, what do you expect to see in this match? And as a whole, what is your prediction as of right now? I know it's early, but what would you say is going to happen?
I mean, it's in line with what I've been saying for weeks. The money match at WrestleMania in WWE's eyes is Lesnar Reigns. As a result, I think that there's going to be a few things that happen. And I think Reigns Rollins, while it's going to be a great match, they all are having house shows, Rollins coming out being a babyface. I don't know really why they're doing it because Rollins has always been better as a heel. But they have him as a babyface right now on house shows. They have him overpowering the Usos 2-on-1 and then beating Reigns. I think Roman Reigns loses to Seth Rollins here due to interference from Brock Lesnar and has Reigns go into WrestleMania to face Brock Lesnar for the title. Now, I don't think this is a perfect way of them doing it. I think the way they would have wanted to do things is to have Reigns drop the belt to Lesnar last month or a few weeks ago at day one. However, things changed. COVID happened. So you got to account for those changes. The one thing's for sure, one of these two is not going to be leaving the Royal Rumble with their belt still. We'll get to the Lashley-Lesnar match a little bit later, but one of these two won't be leaving with their belt. The whole idea of belt versus belt is a concept that they're not going to do at this year's WrestleMania. There's too much stock in having two belts, having two separate shows, two different brands at this point. And it'll just dissolve every single reason for them having it. I'm really excited to see what they do here. I do think Rollins wins. I think Reigns goes into the Rumble and at number 30, once again, demolishes everyone, wins the Rumble, and then faces Brock Lesnar. But this is only the case if Reigns loses to Rollins due to interference from Lesnar. If, we'll get to the Lashley fight. I'll let you talk about this one. But if we get to the Lashley fight and the inverse happens where Reigns screws Lesnar, I don't see Lesnar in the Royal Rumble. And we can talk about that a little bit more too.
Yeah, I want to get into that also, but I just want to touch on this match quickly too, because I still am a big Roman Reigns guy, and I want kind of want to see him hold the title for as long as possible because I've said it multiple times, this is the best title run I've seen in a while. But at this point, it kind of seems like it's getting a little stale, and I really wouldn't mind a Rollins win at all. It's pretty clear since SummerSlam they've been going in the direction of Reigns versus Lesnar for WrestleMania. Obviously, there were rumors of Drew McIntyre maybe being in that match as well, setting up a triple threat, which is something that I would like to see. But that's probably not going to happen due to his injury. It's going to be Reigns versus Lesnar. It's pretty obvious. And Seth Rollins, it was not obvious, but he was definitely the contender to win that day one match before Lesnar was added. And it even came out after that he was going to win the WWE title at day one and beat Biggie. And he probably would have went into WrestleMania with the title as well. So if WWE is throwing him in this Universal title feud, I think that just makes it even more clear that he's going to win this match. I think they want to give him the title again. They've been high on him for a very long time, for his entire career. He was the one they pushed before Roman Reigns, really, with that main title. And I think they just want to give him another title run. As for how it's going to happen, I do think Reigns gets screwed over probably in some way. I don't know exactly how, because obviously Lesnar's the face, but it's going to happen some way. But I guess that's really just a perfect segue into Lashley versus Lesnar. Because
I mean, before we do that, I do have a bit of fantasy booking here. Now, it's kind of unclear what happens with the result of this match because, we do know that Reigns Lesnar is the plan. However, if Rollins is the champion, there is one thing I do want to see, and it doesn't have to be something that's at WrestleMania. And it doesn't have to be something where he wins the Royal Rumble, but the dark matches for the last few episodes of SmackDown and Raw have had Tommaso Ciampa from NXT coming up and beating Pete Dunne. And Ciampa has been getting very good reactions from the crowd to the point where the people in the back are noticing it. Now, he's a guy who I don't think they're ever going to give a credible push to. He's 5'10", 5'11". He's barely over 215, 220. He's a guy that's an older archetype, kind of around the same size as Seth Rollins, actually, believe it or not, but a little like 1 or 2 inches shorter. And with the idea that WWE is going into the idea of making all these new wrestlers and people they're pushing bigger guys, the one thing I'd love to see is just Ciampa held this brand down for NXT 2.0 for the first few months of it. And I'd really love for them just to show some appreciation and maybe just give him a match against Rollins, kind of like they did with Neville a few years back. Just give him a match on Raw, or just give him a match on SmackDown, or at whatever pay-per-view comes before WrestleMania. I don't think he's going to be someone they're going to throw into a WrestleMania main event right away, which is why I'm not talking about him being in the Rumble. However, I would love to see him just face off against Rollins. It's a dream match of mine. So there's some fancy booking for you.
Yeah, that's definitely a dream match as well. That's something I'd love to see. And we could kind of touch on this slightly more with just Seth Rollins winning the Universal title. I don't want to get too in-depth right now with Royal Rumble winner predictions because we'll obviously get into that later. But, I mean, in terms of just WrestleMania, who are some guys that you would like to see face Rollins? Not who you think would, but who you would like to see.
There are a few. I've said it every single week, and you already know who I'm going to say, but Damien Priest is my guy. Damien Priest is, in my opinion, the MVP of the mid-card over the last year in WWE. He's done a great job. He came in last year's Royal Rumble, entrant number 14, eliminated both The Miz and Morrison during a distraction from Bad Bunny. You had that great WrestleMania program with Bad Bunny and Damien Priest against The Miz and Morrison. He gets pushed to the United States champion picture, gets a few with Sheamus, has a really good slew of matches. Just been a dominant champion, really good, in an era where the mid-card's getting, not acknowledged really as much anymore because, who knows when the last time a match for the Intercontinental title happened. It's really good to see Damien Priest holding it down. And I cannot wait to see him get a world title at some point. And it's going to definitely be in next year, just judging by how his trajectory is going and how much they like him apparently backstage. However, I think it's a great opportunity for him to, show out and, be Rollins. He did eliminate Kane too last year. Yeah, thank you. That was huge. That was a big moment where you could just tell. I was watching it live when he eliminated Kane. I was like, wait, they might be really ready to push this guy. So I think that Damien Priest would be a great choice. I think the most logical choice would be Biggie, just judging on how things are. Big E's someone who I really don't want to see them returning to the mid card, because when Kofi lost the title, they returned him right to the mid card immediately. Big E makes the most logical sense to win the Rumble to face that title. I do think that the winner of the Rumble will not be someone from the Roman Brock feud, because that's a bit of a cop out. So I do think it's going to be someone who is challenging Rollins. The other one is Edge. And I don't want to see him do back to back necessarily, because the Royal Rumble for me, it's always a dispute on, who, if it's a thing to elevate a superstar who hasn't been elevated yet, or to, further a feud between two high profile superstars. I think it should be the former. So Edge being the Rumble winner would be something that's boring to me. One other piece of fantasy booking, and it's something that I don't want to see happen as much as I do want to see it happen for obvious reasons, and that's Johnny Gargano comes back, surprise entrant number 30, wins the Rumble, faces Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. It's probably the only way they could get him to stay in WWE would to be offer him a main event match at WrestleMania. The guy deserves it. The guy has given his all for this company. He has been the most exciting wrestler to watch the past few years in WWE and NXT. He has the fan base, the fans would go nuts, both casuals and hardcore alike. Everyone loves Johnny Gargano. Everyone loves Johnny Wrestling. So I would say any of those three, or any of those four that I mentioned, those would be my ideal ones.
There are three guys that I would like to see Rollins face at WrestleMania if he ends up winning the Universal Championship. One of them I'm not going to mention right now because I want to go in depth on him later. But these two, keep in mind, these are just fantasy. These are not my predictions because neither of these will likely happen. But one is AJ Styles, simply due to the fact that, they've already been in the ring together. These are two of the best performers in the entire world, two of the best performers in our generation. And to see Styles, I said it a few weeks back, to see Styles win that his first Royal Rumble, really, towards the latter half of his career, that's something that I really want to see. That's basically the one thing he hasn't accomplished yet, and that's something that would just be a great moment to see. And then you throw him into a feud with Rollins. I would like to see that a lot. The other one, this might be a little repetitive because we saw this match at WrestleMania last year, and we've been talking about it for a while. The whole entire wrestling community. Cesaro. I think this way, you're not putting Cesaro in the top level main event feud. You could have this match be one of the supporting matches on night 1 or 2 to the women's main event, or Reigns versus Lesnar. Again, this is just completely fantasy, but they feuded last year. You could have Rollins as the heel claim he won the feud, or I don't really know the exact angle, but I think this way you're not throwing Cesaro right into the main event of WrestleMania, but you're still giving him a main event match. You're still finally pushing him. And again, that's definitely not going to happen, but it's just something I'd definitely be interested in seeing. But now we could talk about the WWE Championship match.
I just have one more because it just came to me. And there is one more person who's more logical than Big E, and that's Kevin Owens. And I don't know how I missed it. But if you look at Raw, they're it's very obvious what they're doing here. They're doing the typical Kevin and his buddy, and then Kevin will turn on him, or maybe Kevin will actually get turned on in this chance. But just think about it here. They have Rollins going babyface at house shows. They have Kevin Owens still being a heel at house shows. Kevin Owens has a history of turning on his opponents. What better way for Kevin Owens to turn on someone would be to win the Royal Rumble, have him winning the Royal Rumble, and have him and Rollins still being buddies, where he's like, oh, I won't use it on you. And then maybe on the second to last pay-per-view or second to last show, he'll turn on Rollins and be like, I'm going to be facing you at WrestleMania. I feel like it writes itself. It's just his character. I think Rollins versus KO is something that they did at Mania a few years ago, and it was a great match, but I think they could revisit it again.
Yeah, that one didn't cross my mind either, and that should have probably been the obvious pick for a Rollins match. These two have just such great chemistry, and they keep finding storylines within the rivalry to make it feel renewed and make it feel fresh. Because we've seen this match a lot, but it never really gets old, or this feud a lot, and it never gets old because they find ways to renew the rivalry and make it feel fresh. And I definitely like to see that at WrestleMania, kind of along the lines of a Jericho feud, as you said. But this time, actually have the title on the line.
Yeah, if we think about it right now, this is a hot take probably, but are there two more trustable people both in the ring and on the mic in WWE than both KO and Seth Rollins? You'd be hard pressed. They're two guys who always elevate people they're facing, and they're consistently like the best competitors against each other. They have classics every single time. They have killer promos. It just feels like those two are at a different level right now, and that would make a really, really good championship feud.
I think, yeah, those two are definitely at the top. I would also have a guy like, just off the top of my head, a guy like Randy Orton in there, AJ Styles, potentially even Roman Reigns in that category. But those two are definitely at the top. And again, they make this feud feel fresh every time, even though we see it like once a year. It always feels fresh to me, and I never mind seeing it. So that's definitely something I like to see. But now we can move into our WWE Championship match, a match that we've all been begging for years. Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. Matt, I'll let you kick us off with this one.
No, I'm going to let you kick it off, Justin, because it's your dream match. You might as well kick it off.
Yeah, this is a match that I've clamored to see ever since Lashley came back. I've been high on Lashley ever since I first saw him in a ring, and it really just sucked to see him get misutilized up until last year. And now they've made him as strong as possible. They've booked him as strong as possible. This is definitely the best way they've booked Lashley by far in his career. Pairing him with MVP in the Hurt Business and making him this tough heel, it's been the perfect way to book him. And honestly, I'm not sure if I would have this happen, but I definitely wouldn't be opposed to Lashley winning due to the bloodline interfering. Because, I mean, although I would probably give it to Rollins. Rollins wins the Universal title. Then you have Brock versus Reigns for the WWE title where Reigns wins. Although that's what I would probably do, I wouldn't mind Lashley winning the WWE title once again. Because, I mean, it first of all, it's more suited for the heels in the bloodline to cost Lesnar this match than for Lesnar to just cost Reigns the match out of nowhere. I think it's more suited for that. So I think it'd make more sense all around. And also, you could have Bobby Lashley go into WrestleMania as champion, and there's a plethora of matches you could have him face off against. I mean, you could have him against Edge, which that's a match that's never happened to my knowledge. Never happened. You could have him against Biggie, which although we've seen it a lot, I mean, this time you could actually write the story within itself that they could have done. They rushed that storyline when Biggie first won the title, but you could finally do that now. I'm not really sure who else would go up against Lashley in this scenario. I think the pool is kind of shallow for potential Lashley feuds. I think it's one of Edge or Big E. Or, I mean, actually, no, definitely not McIntyre. Even though he's hurt, definitely not that. I forgot they fought last year. But I think the pool's pretty shallow, but I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. I think WWE would be able to book it right. I think that would make more sense than Lesnar just costing Reigns out of nowhere. I'm so excited for this match, and words can't even really describe it, so I'm not going in depth. But this, I think, is going to steal the show at the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, I have a few different ideas about this match. This one's a really, really, really exciting match for me. Like you, I've wanted this match for forever, legitimately for years, even before Lashley was in WWE or before he returned when he was back in TNA Impact. I've wanted this match for forever. I was legitimately watching day one, and the second that Lesnar won, they did the stare down with Lesnar and Lashley. I was watching my girlfriend's dad and her brother, and I just turned to her dad, and I was like, yep, my co-host is very excited now, I can tell. But there's a lot of ideas with this match. One of them that came to my mind while you were discussing is there the potential that both Reigns and Lesnar screw each other out of their championship matches and don't have it as a championship match, but a grudge match? I mean, if we think about the way things are going right now, where, Brock Lesnar is someone who he can always be trusted to come back and have a main event spot. He's the epitome of a part-timer. However, it's a match that at this point, it probably doesn't need a title. Like, you could still have a main event and not have it a title match. Like, it would still work. It's still an ultimate grudge match. I think it would still work. It would be very interesting to see which one goes on first. It would make more sense, in all honesty, if Lashley Lesnar went on first, so Reigns and the bloodline could screw him over, and then have Reigns versus Rollins close the show and have Lesnar screw Reigns. It'd make more sense. It'd be a really interesting storyline for them to do it. And, you don't need a championship for this match. There's also a few other ideas that I have here. Number one, if Lashley does win the title, he'd go into WrestleMania the champion. I really like Lashley, but for his level of physicality, I've always thought he does better in hostile matches with like big beefy guys than like smaller wrestlers. It's different for everyone. For example, I always thought Braun Strowman was a lot more interesting when he worked with smaller wrestlers, same as Brock Lesnar. I thought they were also very much more interesting matches. But for, Bobby Lashley, there's one name that comes to mind, and it would be way too soon for them to pull the trigger on this. But if they want to find a way to get Braun Breaker up to the main roster and have him debut in a high profile fashion and give him a championship match right away, I would not be opposed. Kid is amazing, and I love watching him weekly on NXT. He's only 24. He's absolutely jacked to the masses. He also had a few other things. Once again, Damien Priest will not stop saying his name. Love Damien Priest. Love me some Damien Priest. I would love to see Damien Priest face Bobby Lashley. It's a fresh matchup. Both of them are big guys. They could have a great match together. There's plenty of time there for MVP versus Priest on the mic. You could have Bad Bunny come back and be his mouthpiece if you wanted to, and have that be an interesting little fold into it. Also, Bad Bunny returning and being Priest's mouthpiece, if that was a feud, could be very interesting. They're in Dallas, Texas. Once again, last year they were in Tampa, Florida. Now, Florida and Texas, two places where, they've really emphasized when you're going to different areas, they've emphasized catering to the ethnic background that's there. For example, when you went to Florida, you had Bad Bunny there. He's a very, very big star in the reggaeton, Chicano, Latino music scene. And it's very high in Florida. It's also very high in Texas, Dallas specifically, Dallas, San Antonio. It'd be very interesting for them to see if they do that. I think this match is going to be a killer, though. I think it's going to be a really good match. I really want them to give it at least 15, 20. I really don't want it to be a quick match. I think that it's two good opponents that can be incredibly physical. I want to see shades of Goldberg, Lesnar at WrestleMania. I think that was great. The only thing I do not want to see is for Goldberg to come back and have a stare down with Lashley after the match, because honestly, I'm worried that might happen.
That's something I would not put past WWE at all. And I kind of want to talk about Damien Priest a little bit too, because you're obviously the Damien Priest guy, but in terms of that's a guy that I completely forgot going down the list of Lashley opponents that he could possibly face at WrestleMania, because as you said, he really carried the mid card last year. Really just carried the mid card. And again, it's fresh. You could do something interesting with the feud with Bad Bunny, MVP. That's something I would like to see, and that could potentially main event night one of WrestleMania if a women's match isn't stacked up enough.
I do think they're going to have a woman. I think they're going to do what they did last year and have a women's match headline night one, and then have a men's match highlight that night two, especially if it, we'll get to what I think is going to happen in the Women's Royal Rumble later. But if it goes the way that I think it's going to go, I think they are going to do night one, night two again, and have Reigns Lesnar highlight night two.
Yeah, I think they're gonna main event it with the women, but I think Lashley versus Priest. I think that could definitely be a main event match if they were given the keys, and having that somewhere in the middle or beginning of the card. That's just a recipe for success. And then you finally give Damien Priest his rub, give him that title. And something interesting that you talked about also was potentially having them both screw each other out of their championship matches. And that's something I kind of thought of. I didn't really mention it because I think it's unrealistic. But in the case it does happen, I think that, again, the Reigns versus Lesnar does not need a title. I would be much more fine with this match happening if there was not a title on the line. Then you could have Lashley go into WrestleMania as champion against whoever, or potentially he drops it before then at Elimination Chamber, Fastlane, Super Showdown, something like that. And also, you could have Seth Rollins go into WrestleMania as champion as well. And then you have Reigns versus Lesnar headlining it all. That's something I definitely like to see. I think that's the best way to do it, probably. But now we could get into the Royal Rumble match as a whole. We talked about it last week, obviously. But, just break down some candidates that you think could win the men's Royal Rumble match this year.
Yeah. I'm not going to talk about Reigns and Lesnar. I feel like it's something where we know they're facing each other. And my fear is that if one of them walks out as a champion and the championship matches happen before the Rumble match, which is why I kind of want it staggered so that there's a championship match after the Rumble, so that you don't have the worry of, oh crap, these guys could, lose their title, go back in the Rumble, and then win it. Outside of Reigns and Lesnar, I think Biggie is your most likely one. I think just it indicates to me that, they really want to make this year the coronation of Big E, and I am all for it. I love Big E. But like that being said, I feel like he's already at a point where all they have to do to elevate him is to just consistently book him well. And that booking does not need to include him winning the Royal Rumble. I don't think a live crowd or any fans would get sick of Biggie just because he's a fan favorite. Everyone loves him. Everyone knows his story. Everyone, he's an incredible person, incredible worker. Everyone loves him. So Biggie would be a good choice to have as in a title match, probably against Seth Rollins. I wouldn't have him win the Rumble. Damien Priest, great choice to win the Rumble, but I don't think he's going to win the Rumble. Kevin Owens makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense for either side you look at it. If you have Lashley go into the WrestleMania being the champion, Kevin Owens versus Lashley, I could see that happening. If you have Rollins going in, Kevin Owens versus Rollins, that's more likely. For what it's worth, there's a lot of people thinking online that Rollins or Lashley, if they lose their match, could go into the Rumble and win it. I don't think that's happening. I think the fact that they're booked into a title match indicates that they're not going to do it. I also don't think any part-timer is going to come back and win it. I don't think you're going to see a guy like John Cena come back. I don't think you're going to see a guy like Goldberg come back. I don't think that's going to be happening because I think WWE knows. I'll get to this point at a point, after you talk for a bit, but I think they know that they have to branch out and not rely on old talent to keep their, ratings high at this point. They can't keep going back to old talent for a pop because it becomes an unsustainable practice. You could have McIntyre win. There's been this whole thing online about giving him a live crowd for his moment, but the truth is that like he really doesn't need it. He's already been legitimized. Like everyone likes him. Everyone, is a huge fan of him. He gets some of the biggest pops every single night. I don't think you need him to win the Royal Rumble. Would I like to see it? Sure. I mean, I like Drew McIntyre. I don't think he's my favorite wrestler on the roster, but he's a really good wrestler. He's a really good hand. For me, I think Kevin Owens would be the most interesting one to win. I think just looking at things and where they are now, Kevin Owens winning the Rumble, if Rollins wins the title from Reigns, like it looks like it's going to happen, Owens winning the Rumble, maybe having the final four come down to some people he's been with in the past. Have it come down to Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and crap, I would have said Samoa Joe, but they just released him. So, I can't rely on Samoa Joe anymore. But having those guys in the ring together and having Kevin Owens win, facing his old opponents, throwing them out, I think that would be a great choice. I think that'd just be a really interesting choice. The other thing that worries me is if they have something like Riddle and have Riddle out of nowhere win the Rumble. I don't think they do it, but I feel like the writing is on the wall for the matchup at WrestleMania to be Riddle, Randy Orton. So I really don't want to see it happen.
Yeah, I touched on it a little earlier. I mentioned 3 guys that I would like to see win the Royal Rumble, and one of them I kept out, and you touched on him also, Big E. I mean, I've made it clear I've never been the biggest fan of Big E's title reign. I think they rushed it, just throwing him from, although he was Mr. Money in the Bank, throwing him from mid-card to WWE champion just in one night out of nowhere, and then acting as if he's already built himself up as this main card star. That's not something I liked. Again, the way I would have probably booked it is not having Big E win the Money in the Bank at all. Have him going into a feud with Roman Reigns, and he would obviously lose that. But then at the draft, you send him over to Raw, build him up with some wins, have him win the Rumble, win the WWE title at WrestleMania, and then he's legitimized. But in this case, I mean, they sort of built him up as that. I still don't feel like feels like main event material right now. I think he should be. He's one of my favorite talents on the roster. With the way they booked him, he doesn't feel like that to me. Because that WWE title reign, it was obviously not his fault. He did the best he could, but the WWE, I think it was just all around messy booking. They didn't know what they were doing. They threw Rollins into the feud, which was originally supposed to be the day one match. And then they threw Owens in, which made sense at first. But then out of nowhere, just throwing Lashley in and Brock Lesnar. Although I did like those decisions, it just messed with the booking of Biggie as a whole. And at this point, he's been sort of legitimized. Again, I don't really feel like he's that mid-card talent yet. But with a Royal Rumble win, he's going to be legitimized fully. He's going to feel like that main event guy that he is. And then he'll go on to onto WrestleMania, win the WWE title again or the Universal title, and then he's fully legitimized as one of the faces of the company moving forward with Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre and probably Braun Breaker in the future. I would really love to see Biggie win the Royal Rumble just to solidify himself more as that guy, because a lot of people have talked about Biggie, him having potential as this monster heel. I feel like, although that would work, I feel like there's more of a route where he's sort of the next John Cena, just a consistent face for the next decade or so in the main event scene. I think there's more of a route for that. That's something that I could really envision. He has the charisma. He has it all in the ring. And I would love to see Biggie win the Royal Rumble just to fully solidify him as that a little more. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to go into WrestleMania with the big match, probably against Goldberg. But I don't think that's going to happen. And you refuse to touch on this, but I will. Just my prediction as of now, I think Roman Reigns wins the Royal Rumble. I think they're going to have him come in at 30. And I honestly fully think that they'll probably have like 7, 8, 9 guys in the ring at the time. Have Roman Reigns come in, not even with the help of the Usos. He's pissed after losing his title. He literally takes every single one of them out on his own. Just dominates it to win the Rumble. I think.
So do you think it would be kind of a thing where he comes in and legitimately within 60 seconds of his entry number, and maybe have the shortest Rumble match ever in that case?
I don't think it would be that.
Because I feel like at that point you get on the verge where it's kind of Superman booking again, and like I don't know, the one issue that I have with, like, I would love to see that happen. I think that honestly, if Reigns wins the Royal Rumble, that's the most likely way they do it. They'd have him come in at like 29 or 30, beat the crap out of everyone and eliminate them. But my worry is that if you have Lesnar going to WrestleMania as the champ, then you're gonna have Reigns as a face. Because if Lesnar screws out Reigns, then you're not going to be able to have Reigns not be the babyface here because he got screwed. So I feel like that would instantly be monster. You're Superman booking again, and I would worry for his case and like his match's case, and I don't want, like, maybe it would go down kind of like Goldberg Lesnar did back at WrestleMania 20.
I mean, I get where you're coming from with that, and obviously it's a little sloppy with the booking. That's why I said before, I think it'd be more logical to have Lesnar drop the title. But at the same time, I think they could, I'm not sure exactly what they do, but I think they could book an angle where Lesnar has a legitimate reason to cost Reigns rather than him just feeling like it because he doesn't like Roman Reigns. I think that they're going to build towards that, because I feel like Reigns would have lost the title to Lesnar at day one. I feel like that would have happened. I feel like they're trying to get the title off of him just to put it back on him at WrestleMania. And because, I mean, it's really kind of gotten a little stale. I think if they give it a little break, then give it back to Mania. I think that's the route they're going to do. I think that's what they should do. But, I mean, I think they're going to give Lesnar some legitimate reason over the next few weeks or at the Royal Rumble to actually cost him out other than just him not liking him. And I think in terms of him coming in at 30, I don't think it'll just be some quick 60-second thing. I think it could, honestly, the way they should do it would just be to drag it on for like 5 minutes where he just decimates everyone. So
it's kind of like a mauling, kind of like gets uncomfortable for the crowd and he just beats the crap out of everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like, that would be really interesting, because then I feel like the last person they eliminate should be the person that faces for the next champion, or like faces for the other championship, which means maybe it would come down to Reigns versus Big E. Mm-hmm. And you just see Reigns maul him systematically. Have like the New Day guys who wouldn't be in the Rumble maybe just come down to the ring, try to stop him. Reigns mauls them too. There you have a nice little holdover match at whatever pay-per-view comes before WrestleMania, like a elimination chamber. That could be really interesting, actually. I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a weird way to a weird analogy, but I think it could be sort of similar to in the Avengers, the Thanos snap, the blip.
Oh yeah.
Where everyone that we love slowly goes out and out and out by the bad guy. I think it could be like that. A guy like Big E, he takes down Xavier and Kofi. A guy like Cesaro, who everyone loves, a guy like Finn Balor, some guys that he's had feuds in the past, like Edge, who everyone wants to see get that last title reign, and a few other guys on top of that as well. Maybe you could have a guy like John Cena come back and he just decimates him again. I think it could. I think that's the smartest way to do it, because then you keep him intact as a heel going into WrestleMania against Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
So and also it just be, I think that'd be beautiful to watch as a whole.
I have one little bit of fantasy booking here. And it goes into surprise entrance, which I feel like is something that we're going to talk about next. So we can move into that right now. But my fantasy booking is if Reigns does that, he comes in at entrant number 29 because entrant number 30 comes down. It's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Alarm buzzes. It's Pat McAfee. And Pat McAfee gets into the ring, and you have like AJ Hawk and his podcast bros run down trying to beat up Reigns. They all get tossed. McAfee gets tossed, and then Reigns wins the Rumble. I mean, I just feel like at this point, McAfee is a shoo-in for surprise entrant. It makes so much sense. You're going to get so much crossover appeal. He's the best commentator WWE's had in a very long time, and he has so much crossover appeal. You just know it'd be put on Bleacher Report, it'd be put on ESPN, CBS, everything. I feel like it's a done deal that he gets a spot in the Rumble. That would be the funniest way possible. It'd be an awful way to end the show, but I think it'd be hilarious.
Oh, yeah, that would be hilarious. And again, that could mainstream attention as well. And just having him go out and just get demolished by Roman Reigns, that'd be pretty hilarious to see. And I'd like that as well. For a second, I thought you were going to say Chris Jericho comes out.
Nah, we have to go into that right now, though. That's interesting.
Yeah, sure. We could go into that as well. The Forbidden Door is slowly, ever so slowly being cracked open in the WWE. Mickie James from Impact is going to be in the Women's Royal Rumble match. And there's even some rumors that a guy like maybe Chris Jericho or Bryan Danielson from All Elite Wrestling come in the Men's Royal Rumble match. Matt, do you think these rumors are true? Obviously, Mickie James is already confirmed by WWE themselves, but do you think the rumors of potentially having someone in the Men's Royal Rumble match from a different company, do you think those are true? And if so, who would it be?
I think so. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think based on the fact that the recent run of firings by WWE has a lot of talent behind the scenes, like just feeling off, like the morale is really low, letting some talent come in as like a morale booster, like some friends of wrestlers, former wrestlers, letting them come in for the Rumble, kind of, alluding to like their outside presence. I think WWE needs to get a lot more liberal with just, allowing references to other companies. They don't need to be as conservative on, the only company is WWE and we can crap on Impact all the time. I think what they're doing with Mickie James right now is very interesting. We'll get to the Women's Royal Rumble in a bit and surprise entrance there. But as far as the Men's Rumble, Chris Jericho makes the most sense. I mean, he's a guy who's been in he's probably been in over half, 2/3 of the Rumbles at this point. He's been in like all of them since like the 1999 or whatever, and he was in them for like a good slew of the 2000s, 2010s. So it would make sense. I would love to see Matt Cardona get in. He was someone who was always underutilized in WWE. Zack Ryder was my favorite wrestler as a kid, being from New York, Long Island IC, just seeing the vlogs, seeing the podcast, seeing all the stuff he did outside of the ring to get over. His Intercontinental Championship win at WrestleMania 32 is one of my favorite things in recent memory for WWE. I would love to see it. Another name that's in the fold that makes it really interesting for me is Moose, the current TNA Impact World Champion. And it's someone where he keeps challenging Roman Reigns on Twitter. And if you want to have something really interesting, and if you want Reigns to keep pursuing Lesnar, hypothetically, if Reigns loses his championship and Lesnar goes into WrestleMania as the champion, which would be probably the most likely scenario here, having Moose being a stopgap person where Reigns and Moose face off for the Impact World Championship on a show could be a really interesting way to kind of slowly dissolve that Forbidden Door. I don't think WWE is ever going to be like AEW and fully dissolve it and be very open about it. However, I do think it's time for them to start opening it a little bit. So if we're going outside of the company, people that I'd love to see make an appearance in the Rumble, or most likely at least, are probably Chris Jericho. I throw both Cody and Dustin on there. I think if you're going to have one representative from AEW, it should be Cody Rhodes or it should be Chris Jericho. They make the most sense. I know a lot of people are going to argue Bryan Danielson. It'd be great to see him in WWE again, but I just feel like highlighting someone who hasn't been there for a longer amount of time would be very interesting. But I do think they'll probably go for an Impact superstar because I think they're worried about promoting the competition here. And that's where I do think they are going to go with Matt Cardona. If they're going to go with someone, Matt Cardona makes the most sense. Dude was just in the main event title match. Has history in WWE, has a great character right now. The whole idea of, I'm an original ECW member because he was a member of the WWE's ECW reboot in like 2011. brilliant character work. He's someone that's a lot of fun right now on the indies. We could absolutely come out to, have him come out to Radio again, which is one of my favorite theme songs ever. Or you could have him come down to his indie wrestling theme song. But he would make a lot of sense there. Who are your out of the company surprise entrants on your mind?
There are a ton, as you said, Matt Cardona. I think if this is to happen, that's probably a lock. I don't think they're going to do overstuff many guys from outside of the company in the men's Royal Rumble match, but I think they probably do one from Impact, one from AEW, and Matt Cardona would definitely be a shoo-in. In terms of the AEW guys, obviously you mentioned Chris Jericho. You were talking about Kevin Owens potentially winning it earlier, and if we could have a Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho stare down one more time, that would be incredible. This is a dream, but I mean, we never really would have expected WWE to even consider this. So I'm just going to bring it up, even though it's definitely not going to happen. CM Punk back in a WWE ring just one more time would be something that would break the internet. That would break the internet.
Here's the thing. Here's another bit of fancy booking. If you were to have it, you have it come down to something where it would be like two wrestlers who were in a blood feud eliminating each other. And I don't know who you'd do for that case. Maybe you could have Sheamus and Cesaro in there and they both eliminate each other. Clock runs down. CM Punk comes out. Crowd goes crazy. They give him a 2-minute long promo. They make the next entrant come out 2 minutes later. Clock comes down. You think, who could it be? It could be a dream match. It could be AJ Styles. It could be Kevin Owens. Feed me more. And then Ryback comes down to the ring. And I feel like Ryback would be an incredible entrant to have against CM Punk, just knowing how much CM Punk legitimately hates Ryback and how much everyone in the big back legitimately hates Ryback. It would probably be the most hilarious entrant to have. And then have a guy like, Omos come out after and eliminate both of them. It would be the funniest booking after that. After that, Omos gets scared of Pat McAfee, jumps over the top rope, and Pat McAfee and his boys doing a podcast in the middle of the ring for a minute.
I didn't even think of Ryback coming back either. That'd be hilarious to see, because
no one would want it. Absolutely no one would want it. Both backstage in the locker room, fellow wrestlers, because everyone hates him. He doesn't have a single friend in any locker room right now. He's like, what he does for business right now is he promotes conspiracy theories and illegal supplements. So,
I see him on social media all the time being like, "Oh, one day I'll be in AEW, or one day I'll be back in the ring," and that's probably almost definitely not going to happen. And that would just be hilarious just to see one more time against a guy like CM Punk as well. That'd be even better. Just thinking about that, just wow, that would be something I would love to see as a whole. But other guys that I could see being in this match, as you said, Dustin Rhodes, I think that's another likely one, because it sounds like they're bringing some big name guy like a CM Punk or a Chris Jericho that everyone's going to be talking about forever, and that's going to really cloud the show. Dustin Rhodes is a guy that a lot of people will mark out for, but it's not going to be, again, like a CM Punk guy, where if CM Punk comes back in a WWE ring, that's probably going to overshadow the whole pay-per-view, which is why I don't think they'll even try to get him back. Dustin Rhodes being back, that seems like a very likely option from the AEW side. Cody Rhodes was an option as well, but considering he has COVID, that probably doesn't make any sense.
The truth is, though, is that, obviously quarantine is only for a certain amount of time, so it shouldn't be an issue, considering the pay-per-view is on the 29th, and it's the 10th right now. Cody could also be really interesting. I think it'll be one where I would probably appreciate, out of anyone, even Kenny Omega, I would appreciate Cody the most, because Cody is the type of guy who, he was always mid-card in WWE. He left WWE. He's now the executive of AEW. He's the main, with Tony Khan, he's the main booker. And I think that'll be a really, really, really cool way for them to just, be like, look, we might not be, we might be competing, but let's just show solidarity for a moment. Let's just have this cool moment. Let's have Cody in the ring. And there's so many guys in WWE that you could have there. I would personally love it if you had The Miz and Ziggler in there, and then Cody comes in, because they're all very close friends in real life. They're all very close outside of the ring. Actually, the reason why there seems to be a lot of COVID going around right now is because they were all at Mark Cardona's wedding, and they were all his groomsmen. So that seems to be a reason why there's a little bit of an outbreak right now with some of the wrestlers, because there was an outbreak at that wedding. I would love to see that. I think that, I've been a fan of all those guys for such a long time. Having Cody in there will be really appreciated.
Oh yeah, I would love to see Cody back in a WWE ring as well, just for one more time. And there's guys being thrown around like potentially Malachi Black or Miro, but I don't really think either of those are going to happen because
I just think Miro specifically, Miro is absolutely not happening. I don't think Miro ever steps foot in WWE ring again. I think he's been very open about the fact that he was very pissed about how he and his wife were treated, to the point where like Vince repeatedly tried to get them to legitimately break up in real life. That whole Lana Dolph Ziggler terrible feud from 2015 was made just on the basis of, oh, he's too ugly for you, why are you with you? And she like legitimately tried to get her like Lana with Dolph Ziggler. And then they posted to Twitter that they were engaged, and that ended the whole feud, and that punished Miro. So I don't think he'd actually ever want to go back. Tyron has a really interesting one here too. John Moxley, formerly known as Dean Ambrose. I think that's one that's really interesting. I would love to see that happen. I think John Moxley is someone who would be welcomed back with open arms, in all honesty. The thing is, though, is that I don't think he ever wants to go back. I think he's been very open that his career in WWE after, I think, 2017, he was miserable. And that was something where I would love to see him enter. I just don't think it's realistic. I think you have a whole slew of guys, even guys that haven't been in WWE before, that are probably ahead of him on that list. However, it'd be really cool for him, really cool to see him. Also, I would like to see John Moxley, but I really only want to see if Rollins is in the Rumble, because that'd be a great, if Reigns and Rollins were in the Rumble and having that moment again. I think that would make sense. If there's a moment where they're both in the Rumble somehow, yeah. But I mean, they're facing each other for the championship earlier in the night, so I don't think that's a possibility.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to mention that also with Moxley having Rollins or Reigns in the ring. At least one of them, I think, would have to be in there, or else it wouldn't make as much sense, or it wouldn't be as sweet. As a whole, though, I wouldn't see Moxley coming back either.
Yeah.
But one name that I do think is possible to come back is Christian Cage. He was in Rumble, and if we're talking about going back to the Roman Reigns thing where he comes in and demolishes everyone, I could see Christian Cage coming in at 26, 27, 28, late into the Rumble, and then him being another guy that gets demolished. Because I don't know one person that doesn't love Christian Cage, WWE, AEW, whatever company you support. I don't know one person that doesn't love him. That would just be it would be another guy that everyone loves, Roman just takes out. And even if that's not how it goes, just having him in the match, having him with Edge again, maybe have Rollins come in late to the Rumble as well after his match, just to have a stare down after what happened with Edge and Rollins this year. That'd be something I'd really like to see. And just to have him in a ring one more time, especially with Edge, that's something I would like as well.
I mean, I have two other names that I'm thinking about, because I'm also going on the mind of, what if they send an original in? What if they don't send someone with a connection to WWE? And I think, in all honesty, if you're going with an original, you go with Jungle Boy Jack Perry. I think it makes the most sense. They could easily allude to the fact that, he's been shown on screen in WWE before. He has, because Luke Perry, his dad, who was on 90210 and Riverdale, was a massive wrestling fan. He's the one who got Jack Perry into it. And he was regularly in the audience with him. He was shown to several WrestleManias with him. I think it's easy way to get, WWE noticed by the mainstream media, get noticed, get put on like legitimate shows like TMZ, Access Hollywood, etc. Like, 90210 star's son in the Royal Rumble shows clip. Like, that would probably make the most sense. The other one I'm thinking, Darby Allin. I think Darby Allin is someone where a lot of people would be speculating MJF, but MJF doesn't fit, just based to me on the fact that he is so ingrained in that CM Punk feud right now. They'd be shouting CM Punk the entire time and then derail it. And number two, like, his gimmick is he flips off people and cuts promos where he curses a lot. And I love MJF. I just, going by the WWE's demographic right now, I don't think they do it. Darby Allin could be very interesting. I think you could see Darby Allin come in, do some crazy Daredevil spots, have him maybe do a face-off with Kofi Kingston and see who could do the coolest Daredevil spot they have. And I guess one other name that's not signed to any of them, and I don't think he's going to be recovered from injury in time, which sucks, but I would have loved to see Danhausen. I think that Danhausen's a guy who, I've never seen a Danhausen match, but I'm a Danhausen fan. And his gimmick is probably the best gimmick in professional wrestling right now. Demented, evil guy crossed with Conan O'Brien. It's a crazy gimmick. It's hilarious, and I would love to see it in the WWE ring.
Those are all guys that outside WWE I would love to see in this match. Again, as you said, MJF would probably be a dream guy in terms of a guy that has no connection to WWE outside of like Kenny Omega. But again, CM Punk will get in the way of that because all the fans will be shouting his name, and his gimmick doesn't really fit WWE's demographic. One more guy that I want to touch on really quickly before we move into the Women's Royal Rumble is Matt Hardy, because that's just another guy that's like, he's not as mainstream. I mean, a guy, it's similar to Dustin Rhodes where he's not going to really take over the entire pay-per-view, I would think. Like a guy like CM Punk, again, probably it would overshadow the whole pay-per-view. A guy like Matt Hardy, it would be a great moment, it wouldn't overshadow it.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you here. I'm sorry, but I think it's something where, obviously never say never. I think there's a good chance you never see the Hardys in WWE again. I think just judging based on what happened with Jeff's exit earlier this year, where it's, very confusing circumstances. No one really knows anything that's going on. The Hardys have been adamant there was no drug usage, so it's not a potential there. I think there's a very low likelihood that you see that. That's a very interesting one. I don't think you're going to see Braun Strowman. However, if you could put that comment up right now, Brian Cage is going to be the first guy to go from AEW to WWE. I think it's very clear. He fits their role so well. He is very clearly on the juice right now. So he'd have to get off of that to pass the wellness check violations. But he is someone who is WWE. He's built for WWE. He is not happy in AEW to the point where he and his wife have started angrily tweeting at Tony Khan saying that he's not getting enough screen time, which honestly is BS considering the amount of time he's already gotten. Brian Cage is someone who would make a lot of sense for the WWE style. He's someone I can't believe I forgot. I would love to see him in there. I've never been a massive fan of him. I don't love his character work or anything like that, but his in-ring work is dope. And I would love to see Brian Cage in the Rumble. I think before we move to the Women's Royal Rumble, which people in-house, like on the roster currently, maybe in NXT, would you want to see in the Men's Royal Rumble?
From NXT? From NXT, definitely I would want to see just a small appearance from Braun Breaker. He's really the guy that I think is going to take over WWE one day, be one of those Mount Rushmore guys for this next generation. I would love to see Braun Breaker make a small appearance. Tommaso Ciampa as well, to maybe bring him up to the main card. Maybe that's his way in. But again,
I would say Tommaso Ciampa is probably a lock for the Rumble. I would say it just makes the most sense. They've been doing him on dark matches. He'll probably get called up in the Rumble. I'd say that.
Yeah, I think Tommaso Ciampa, maybe that's his way onto the main roster again. As we talked about earlier, Ciampa versus Rollins as a potential match. That's something I'd like to see. And there's not really many other guys, but I would also like to see someone like maybe LA Knight in the Rumble. Just a few guys sprinkled in that could be featured on the main roster soon. Really anyone, honestly, any of the men's talent. I mean, like any of the main ones from NXT, I think could be good. Again, it's just like I think Braun Breaker is going to be in it. I think Tommaso Ciampa is going to be in it, but I think that's about it. But honestly, I would be fine with most of the men's participants.
I'll offer you up one more name, and it's one that I don't think is being discussed enough. But Carmelo Hayes right now is doing it insane on WWE NXT 2.0. And I think he and Braun Breaker are going to be the 1A, 1B for this next generation. I think Carmelo Hayes is, look, you had Swerve Scott, and Swerve was dope. And I love Swerve, and I cannot believe how dirty they did him. And I thought he was going to be one of the next big things for WWE. But Hayes has kind of started picking up right where he left off with the, slimy heel, has a ally who's larger than him. They're both cheating to win. They're both fighting Johnny Gargano right now. They were fighting Johnny Gargano, but like they're in those matches. I would love to see me some Carmelo Hayes in the Rumble. I think LA Knight's also a very good guest. I think, honestly, if we don't see Braun Breaker like have a very strong showing in the Rumble, then I do think your two people in the Rumble would be Tommaso Ciampa and LA Knight. I think it just makes the most sense. If they want to preserve Braun Breaker, have him stay down there for like another year. But I think they really should shoot him up sooner rather than later because they could have him be the next big thing.
Oh, yeah. Carmelo Hayes is a guy that I've been high on for a while. He has it all in the ring, on the mic. He's been training with Shawn Michaels as well. He's been learning from him. I hope they don't do him wrong. I hope they don't mess him up when he gets eventually called up. But, I mean, he has the makings to be, again, with Braunbreaker 1A, 1B for this next generation. But we could touch on the Women's Royal Rumble a little bit. We're a little pressed for time, but we can touch on it a tiny bit. I'm sure this will be one of our main topics next week. So I just want to firstly bring up, I mean, the Forbidden Door, it's being cracked open slightly with, firstly, Mickie James in this Royal Rumble match. Do you think there's any potential for, obviously she won't win it, but do you think there's any potential for her having any good spots in this match? And do you think there's potential for her going far in here?
Yeah, I mean, there's one person. Like if we think about Mickie James and her last stint in WWE, it was very underwhelming. There are really only two people that people remember her being in alliances with or in feuds with. One would be Alexa Bliss, and it would make a lot of sense because Alexa Bliss is slated to return tonight on Raw. It would make a lot of sense for her to call out Mickie James, and maybe if the first Forbidden Door match for WWE would be to send Alexa Bliss into Impact and have her fight for the championship, that would not surprise me at all. I think that'd be a great call by then. However, there's one other person, and I'm going to call it right now, but returning from injury, being the Iron Woman of the Women's Royal Rumble, entrant number 1 is going to be Asuka. I think it makes the most sense. I think knowing that Sasha Banks is going to be injured, where she's usually the Iron Woman for these matches. She was the Iron Woman in the first Women's Royal Rumble. She's a very dependable hand. You need another dependable hand to be in there. Becky Lynch is probably going to be the champion. Can't have her. Bianca Belair is probably going to be in a match for the championship earlier in the night. You can't have her. Like, you can have Charlotte in there, but I think you have Asuka in there. I think you have her be the ring general for this. And then I also think entrant number 29 or 30, your winner of the Women's Royal Rumble. It's changed from Liv Morgan. I think your winner of the Women's Royal Rumble is Bayley. I think she returns from her torn ACL that she suffered last year, and I believe it was April or March. I think she returns. I think she's going to go to WrestleMania. I think she's going to face Charlotte for that SmackDown Women's Championship, and I think that's all but confirmed at this point.
I would love to see Bayley win the Royal Rumble. I think Asuka's definitely, I would be shocked if she wasn't in it. Bayley, it's a little, I mean, how is it confirmed? Like, what have you seen that's saying it's confirmed? Because, I mean, an ACL injury takes a while. She was injured after WrestleMania sometime. So
Bayley is some of the best Twitter game out of any of the current wrestlers on the roster, male and female. It's just something where if you look kind of the injury time, it was mid-February or early March. Actually, because it was before WrestleMania, right?
I think it was after.
It has to be before, because remember, she was in a feud, I think, before then, because who did Charlotte face last year at WrestleMania? Or Charlotte didn't face anyone. It was
I don't think she did.
I just know for a fact Bayley wasn't on the card. I think she was injured before it.
I think maybe she was injured before, but I remember there being some rumors of Becky Lynch coming back to face Bayley on the spot.
And she got injured right after. She got injured the week after because she was in that weird segment with the Bellas where everyone thought that Becky was going to return, but the Bellas came and they kicked her and she rolled down the ramp and was cringy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. ACL injury usually takes around 7 to 8 months for a wrestler. Obviously different for other sports, but for a wrestler, it's 7 to 8 months of rehab. And I do think that Bayley would probably make a lot of sense here. Just also based on the fact of like, look, if she's starting to like get her Twitter game up a little bit more, and if you look at who's the champion right now, Charlotte versus Asuka is a match that I don't want to see just because I think Charlotte leaves the company after the end of her contract. I think she's very close on her way out. I don't think she really wants to be there anymore. And apparently backstage, she's not being too liked by everyone. I think Bayley would make a lot of sense to take off the championship for her, mainly on the fact that I think they will switch Bianca to whatever brand she's on. So you have Bayley versus Bianca for the first feud out for the women's title and revisiting that feud from earlier. I just think it makes the most sense here. Nothing's obviously been confirmed, but like injury recovery time would state that she'd probably be returning in this Rumble.
Yeah, I think if Bayley comes back, I think the final two should be her and Liv Morgan. And I would probably still give that to Liv Morgan just because I really like what they're doing with Becky Lynch and Liv Morgan right now. I don't expect them to face off at the Rumble. I think Bianca Belair will face Becky Lynch, but I think Liv Morgan, the way they've been pushing her lately, I don't think they should derail that. Obviously, there's ways to get her in a match with Becky Lynch outside of the Rumble, but I think having her win the Royal Rumble and build it up like that for a few months, Becky Lynch versus Liv Morgan, main event at night one of WrestleMania, I think that's the way they should do it. Something else, though, that, I mean, we got Lita returning. We have Nikki Bella returning. We've heard for a few years now that there's a possibility of a Trish Stratus and Sasha Banks match. And Trish Stratus hasn't been announced. But do you think there's a possibility of her being a surprise entrant that WWE is keeping from us?
Yeah, I could see it. I think she's a lot less likely. Just based on the fact that you can only have so many legendary wrestlers in it. And I think the main criticism with the original Women's Royal Rumble is that it was very legend heavy, where Michelle McCool had 5 eliminations. So like that was a major issue, is the fact that like it was very legend heavy. I'm looking at the list right now, and it looks like there's 4, 5, 6. There's like 7 legends returning the match. That's already nearly 1/3 of the entrance. I don't know if they'd have Trish Stratus in there, just based on the fact that, like, look, you can't really have as many legends, because also you have to give some stuff for the new crop of NXT talent. But I think it'd be interesting. I just think you don't need the Rumble for that. I think you could have Sasha Banks issue an open challenge to her and have her answer it. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about a few different things here. I think, because like, if you want to talk about maybe NXT people, I think the most obvious debut for NXT would be Raquel de Gonzalez. I think she just makes the most sense to be moved up to the main roster right now. She doesn't have anything else to do in NXT. Sadly, her character's gotten a little bit stale down there, so it worries me for how her projection might turn out on the main roster. But I do think Raquel Gonzalez is going to be debuting in this Royal Rumble.
Yeah, I think a Trish Stratus return is possible. I think at the same time, though, as you said, there's a chance it doesn't happen because they need to get some shine on the current stars and the NXT stars. But I would definitely love to see Trish Stratus in the Rumble, and I would definitely love to see Trish Stratus or Sasha Banks at WrestleMania. Sasha might not be in this match, but probably won't be in this match actually because of her injury. But it's still something that I would like to see nonetheless happen at WrestleMania. And there's definitely a possibility of Stratus being just a surprise entrant. But we'll touch on the Women's Royal Rumble more next week. That's going to do it for this week.
I have one quick thing, because I just got a notification. There was a house show last night in Boston. And just to give some credence to what we were talking about before about potential winners for the Men's Royal Rumble and main event matches in WrestleMania, the match was Seth Rollins and Dolph Ziggler versus Bobby Lashley and Damien Priest. So take that for what you will. But I do think we are going to see a Bobby Lashley and Damien Priest match at WrestleMania, whether it's for the U.S. title or for the WWE title.
Regardless, that's a match that I would love to see. Yeah. And even if it's for the U.S. title, that's going to make you have even a bigger fight feel for that.
Absolutely. And I think my hope, honestly, would be for Lashley to beat him, get the U.S. title back, and then have Priest go on to face Rollins. I think it just makes the most sense.
Or to win the Money in the Bank. Either or works for us.
Priest is, by SummerSlam, Priest will be a world champion. I'm just very excited for his future.
Yeah, I hope so. But that's going to do it for this episode of Off the Top Rope. Again, subscribe to the TWSN Betting Patreon. 50% off the whole month. Throw in some money, gain some money. They've been killing it week in and week out. Also, follow the Instagram and Twitter at TWSN. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for more daily video breakdowns and more podcasts like this on a daily basis. And download the mobile app to access all the content from our writers, our team of 50+. So that's going to do it. This has been the Off the Top Rope podcast. We'll see you next Monday. Peace.
Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard